When you're running as a candidate and you knock on a door, people tell you things at such an intense level, it can make you cry. My mother broke her leg. My uncle was evicted. They tell you deeply personal stories because their expectations of government officials are that we are going to try to help.
I'm Sarah McCammon, and this is What It Takes from Unmoderated News. When Eileen Higgins was in her 40s, she was given an odd assignment. During a corporate exercise, she was asked to write her own obituary. She sat down to write it and realized, yeah, she was successful and accomplished, but what was missing was service. So she walked away from her career and went to work for the Peace Corps. Eventually, she ran for office in Miami. She was a commissioner in one of the city's most diverse and most politically complex areas. She represented neighborhoods like Little Havana, where many Cuban American voters were deeply skeptical of Democrats. But she won them over by promising to listen, to work to include everyone in Miami's economic growth, and to never enrich herself in the process. Now, Eileen Higgins is the mayor of Miami, the first woman to become mayor, and the first Democrat to lead Miami in nearly 30 years. She got there by beating a candidate endorsed by Donald Trump by close to 20 points. I sat down with Mayor Higgins in Miami to talk about what it takes to build affordable housing in one of America's most expensive cities, what it's like to lead a city shaped by immigrants through a surge in federal deportations, and what she thinks Democrats keep getting wrong and right about the voters they need to win over. Here's my conversation with Miami Mayor Eileen Higgins. Well, Mayor Eileen Higgins, it's so nice to be here in Miami. The weather is amazing. It's everything it's cracked up to be.
Always is.
Yeah, and I've got my Miami pink, my manicure, my dress, so I'm good to go. Thank you for taking the time to be here today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Looking forward to our conversation.
Well, I want to talk about politics, of course, but first, I want to go back a little bit because you started your career not at all in politics. You started out in engineering and manufacturing. And I understand there was a blue jumpsuit involved.
Yes. I grew up in New Mexico, and my dad was an engineer. My brother's an engineer. So obviously, my father pretty much encouraged me to go in engineering. As a matter of fact, he only told me there were two possible careers. I could be an engineer or a physicist. So I thought, physicists probably have no friends, so I selected engineering.
You picked the cool profession.
I picked the cool profession. I majored in mechanical engineering, and sure enough, my first job was, heavy-duty manufacturing plant outside of Houston, Texas. Used to wear one of those zip-up blue jumpsuits and steel-toed boots to work, and it was a great way to learn how to work. Because in manufacturing, you're part of a team immediately, right? There's a large group of people on your shift. You have to depend on each other to get things done, to make sure that things are done safely, that things are done in an environmentally conscious way. And I wouldn't have started my career any differently than in engineering.
There's another aspect of your backstory, though, that I'm super fascinated by, because you made kind of a big change in your early 40s. And as a woman of a certain age, I think everyone I know in their 40s is like thinking about where their life is, doing that midlife thing. And a lot of people sort of fantasize about making a big change. But you were asked to write your own obituary as part of a corporate exercise. And I know that had a really big impact on you. I mean, first of all, that sounds incredibly dark and a little overwhelming to get an assignment like that. How did that feel? And what did you write about?
Well, it was interesting. We were in a professional development. You do these corporate retreats when you, over time, are pretty senior in management. And I had, gone and been promoted quite a lot in the private sector. And so we're at a retreat, and that was our homework assignment: write your own obituary. And you came back the next day, and the questions were pretty straightforward. What's in there that you're really proud of, and what's missing? And for me, what was missing was the service part of life. And I took that almost as, marching orders and said, I'm going to start making sure that becomes part of my life. And within a year, I had left a big corporate job. was the director of the Peace Corps in Belize, continued in federal service as a diplomat in the Foreign Service. And eventually when I moved to Miami, that led me to want to serve as a local official. So yeah, it's amazing how one night can completely change your trajectory if you're open to change. And I do think being open to change is really important for us to live happy, healthy lives.
Do you remember like when you sat down to write that essay, to write that obituary, like what was going through your head?
Well, at the time, I felt like I was writing my resume, right? You know, she was this, she grew up there, she studied this, she was really good at that, she worked here, she worked there. It felt very factual. And of course, I led a beautiful, I had tons of friends and I had a great life and I had great jobs and I felt successful, but there wasn't all the emotion in there that I wanted. And my obituary now will be very different, 20 years later, or hopefully not quite 20 years later. I don't think it's been that long, but I think it'll be different and it'll be more meaningful. It's more meaningful to me, the changes that I have made in my life to try to be of service to other people.
You know, I do think a lot of people sort of imagine changing things up, going to another country, doing something different. You actually did it though. I mean, what is it about you that gave you, I guess, the courage to step away from everything you'd done before?
I'm not afraid of change. And I don't know if that is just inherent in me, but I encourage other people to not be afraid of change. Because throughout my career, doors have opened. And if you just look at them and don't walk through them, you will miss incredible opportunities to expand your experiences, meet new people, step out of your own culture, step out of your comfort zone. And when you do that, you become more comfortable with difference and you become more comfortable with challenges and you begin to realize that you can work on all of those things. So I always encourage, that is one thing I say to young people when they say, how do I start out a career? For me, a career and a life is a winding path. Mm-hmm. It's not a straight arrow to the top. And maybe the straight arrow to the top gets people richer and more famous. But for me, I have had an enriching life with all sorts of experiences all over the world. And sometimes I've learned from them and sometimes I've excelled at them. But that's what young people need to think about. Add experiences that build skills and you'll have an amazing career and a beautiful life.
When you walk through those new doors that you hadn't walked through before, how did you deal with the uncertainty and the not knowing?
Well, the secret to my success, I always say, is I just set the alarm every morning and I wake up positive. Now, some days I get beaten back and I don't go to bed feeling success, but I do try to restart the clock every day. And that doesn't mean that I don't have long-term projects and that I can't plan or implement things over the long run, but it's nerve-wracking every time you start a new job. I'm mayor of the city of Miami. You know, I've just a little bit over 100 days as we're talking, and people are like, what's it like? I said, it's still a new job. You walk into the office, the stapler is out of staples, and you don't know where the staples are kept. And so there's always going to be little things that are going to make you uncomfortable, but you just power through them. And by the way, in new things, sometimes you make errors and you learn from them and you move on. And so don't be afraid of that. No one expects you to be perfect, by the way, in any job. I've never worked for anybody that expects me to be perfect. They expect me to achieve the objectives in the long run and do the best I can on the way. And if you mess up every now and then, you say, I messed up, you learn from your mistake, your boss is generally happy.
This is great. This feels like a therapy session.
Well, I can send you a bill if you'd like at the end.
Do you have like rituals or anything you do in the morning to sort of reset yourself, especially if you've had a rough day the day before?
No, mostly the reset is at night. I'll listen to Coltrane and then I'll watch reruns of The Big Bang Theory. So if you're having a bad day, 30 minutes of The Big Bang Theory, it's all over. You cannot possibly be sad at the end of those 30 minutes.
And then sleep it off and wake up the next day.
Wake up the next morning and start all over again.
So you did come back to Miami after the Peace Corps and you went into local politics.
Well, when I moved to Miami, it was the first time I ever moved somewhere that I chose the place. I didn't get transferred there for work. It was the first time, and I was thinking, okay, I've had this career. I'm ready to settle down. I want to build another part of my career and my life, and where do I want it to be? I'd lived in Miami before, so it felt like I was coming back to a place that I had loved, but I chose it. And when you choose that place, the meaning of the place is different because it's not all about work. It's all about community. And I got involved in Miami in a way that I never had in any other place that I lived. Neighborhood associations, environmental clubs, walking clubs, running clubs, knitting. I just met so many people here that very quickly I felt integrated here as if I'd lived here my whole life. But we definitely had a local government that was not as efficient as it could or should be. And I tried to find people to run. I mean, that was how I ended up, quite frankly. I would call everybody I knew. I had 3 requirements in order for me to support you as a political candidate. You had to be skills qualified to do the job, right? You had to have some work experience. You had to be values qualified to represent human beings and what they need to be to prosper. And as we say down here in the 305, you have to be #Miami famous. And I asked every single person, I'll support you. I'll help you run. I'll help you raise money. And they all said no. It's too hard to run and it's too public and you put yourself out there. And finally, somebody said to me, why are you doing this? We think you should run. But I, at that time, had only lived here 3 years. And I thought, well, who the heck's going to vote for me? But it ended up when you pick a place and you love a place and you're every day meeting people and you care about it and you share why you can make a difference, people are willing to vote for you. And in 2018, they did.
I want to go back to the second part. You had the 3 qualifications and you talked about being values qualified. What does that mean?
I believe that economic opportunity has to be available for everyone, right? And we have to make sure that everybody prospers. And in part, I think I developed that core value, which has led me to local government. And it's my approach to local government is very different than other people. I just told you I had a 20-year career in the private sector, right? So I had grown big businesses. I knew how to drive profit. And that's crucial in a local economy. But my work in the Peace Corps taught me that you can't leave people behind and that you can lift people out of poverty. There are real tools and activities and programs you can do to make sure they have access to opportunity. And so my values are very much around doing both of those things. And so when I say, this is why people are sometimes mystified by me, like, why you're so good about talking about business? Why do all these business people like you? Yet, why do you walk into a middle income struggling neighborhood and everybody knows you and you've worked on all of their programs? It's because we have to do both. We have to grow the economy. We have to make sure a city like Miami is prosperous. We can't leave people behind while we do it. And that's the value that I approach my governing strategy with. And I tend to support people that share my values.
You said you chose Miami, and maybe the answer is obvious. We were just talking about the weather. But why? Why did you end up here in particular?
For me, I wanted to live somewhere that was incredibly diverse. I do not like being in environments where it's monochromatic and everyone is the same and sounds the same and thinks the same. And if you spend half an hour in Miami, you'll know that none of us are the same. We come from different places. We speak different languages. We eat different foods. We have different political points of view. We're conservative. We're not conservative. We're in the middle. We like to boat. We hate to boat. We like to fish. We hate to fish. We like the Everglades. It's just such a richly diverse place. I felt at home and I don't want to use the word misfit because that's off, but you can be different here and fit in because everybody is different. And living in a diverse community is the best thing you can ever do for me.
Well, speaking of that diversity, before you were mayor, you were a county commissioner, and District 5, the district you represented, was 70% Hispanic, much like Miami as a whole. Your district included some conservative-leaning areas like Little Havana, which is, one of the most, I think, politically fascinating and politically complex areas in the country. We're talking about a place that's heavily Cuban-American, often historically Republican, and people that are, I think, deeply skeptical of anything that smells of socialism at all. What did you hear from those voters about what they were wanting from their leadership?
When I first ran in that part of town, and that was in 2018, there was just a lot of skepticism between Democrats and Republicans. And these folks are Republican, right? And also that district had been represented by a guy for 25 years, right? So you were crossing party, you were crossing gender, you were had to cross ethnicity to get to me to vote. And I just tried not to have those discussions. I asked them what worried them about their neighborhood and what they wanted to see fixed. And I always promised to do it and never steal, right?
Never steal?
Never steal, which we had a history of a very convoluted, corrupt government. And so I used to end every debate with these three promises, and I have kept to them. I will listen to both sides on every issue. I will make values-based decisions that I think are in the best interest of the residents of this community. And I will never enrich myself nor any member of my family while making those decisions. And I was always the only person that would say that. And over time, people came to trust me. And the first time I won by like 5 points, which was still a shock and surprise. But then I did what I told them I was going to do. I told them I was going to build affordable housing. Well, guess what? I built 4,000 units of affordable housing, 3,000 more in the pipeline. I told them I was going to expand mass transit, and I was successful in achieving funding from the federal and state level. And we've opened the South Corridor. Even now, up in Washington, the president's budget, one of our key projects has $389 million for transit. So I said I was going to build mass transit, and I did build mass transit. I said I was going to support small businesses, and I had a program where 1,000 small business owners were part of a huge training program, including access to capital. So at the end of the day, when I started to run for mayor, it's like, I told you I was going to do it. I did it.
So that's the magic formula.
Just do what you say. Like, this is not a trick question. You make campaign promises. Don't promise things you can't do. Tell people you're going to do things you can do. And then when you get there, do them. And then they will reward you. And so this idea of mayors, and we got a lot of governors also now that are all the get stuff done. I think about Governor Whitmer, up in Michigan, where she just says like we're going to fix the, roads. And I think that is important, particularly when you're asking people that don't look like you, sound like you. You have to deliver on your promises because they have taken a risk when they voted for you. Mm-hmm. And by the way, some of them really get yelled at by their families. How could you do that? She's a socialist, which of course I'm not. That's ridiculous. I'm an engineer, but their families make fun of them when they cross over. So you got to give them the goods to go, see, I told you she was going to do okay.
On that note about sort of looking different, being different, you have this nickname, La Gringa.
Yeah. Which
I guess means that you're a white lady.
Yeah, which is true.
Yeah. Guilty as charged.
Guilty as charged.
How did you, besides the obvious, how did you get that nickname?
Well, in my first campaign, my first name, Eileen, which is easy to say, but my parents, God bless them, spell it the Irish way. So there's 3 E's and I. So mostly it's a name full of vowels spelled the Gaelic way. And we were in these Hispanic neighborhoods and no one could pronounce the name. And so people used to say, no importa, vote para la gringa, ella está con nosotros. So vote for the white lady, she's with us. And then it just stuck. And even the media would, I would go on radio, aquí tenemos la gringa comisionada. And it was just factual. And one night I had a reporter ask me, like, does that hurt your feelings when we call you, La Gringa commissioner? And I'm like, no, are you saying it to hurt my feelings? You're not saying it to hurt my feelings. I know when people are trying to hurt my feelings, and they were never, ever trying to do that with that. And today, when they call me La Gringa, I'm the person that turns around because I feel that is they are talking to me with a nickname. And usually when you talk to someone using their nickname, it means you care about them.
Now, you did have to climb a big hill to go from commissioner to mayor. You beat a candidate that President Trump had endorsed in a city that had not elected a Democrat in close to 30 years, a city that had never elected a woman as mayor. That's a really big deal. Why'd they elect you?
This year, the election was, I believe, a little different than my previous elections. I believe in general I'm elected because people like that I'm competent, right? They like that I set the alarm every day. I go to work and I work to solve the problems that they want their local government to solve. This year was a little different because the national conversation about immigration, and not just conversation, implementation and the tactics that were being used locally were so aggressive, and the words used to describe people were so inhumane that the residents were ready for a mayor that spoke compassionately about them, that respected them. And so it was a combination of competence and compassion, I think, that made the difference. The trust that they knew I could deliver results because I'd already done that. And they were just looking for a softer, kinder voice. And they knew that I can be kind, but still get things done. And they didn't have to choose between kindness and competence.
You do have a huge number of people here in Miami who are immigrants or have ties to immigrant communities, whether from Cuba or Haiti or other parts of the world. And Miami hasn't gotten as much attention with the ICE raids as, Minnesota, for example. But you did have thousands of people arrested here. As the mayor, you have to follow the law, but you also have people scared, afraid to go to school, afraid to go to work. How have you dealt with this?
Well, as you know, in Florida, we have some requirements for the governor, which the city of Miami signed this agreement called 287G, which the courts have said we don't have to sign, but it's very difficult to unwind. And so we have to be very careful here. But when I look at the difference, whether it was Chicago or Minneapolis or Los Angeles, where everything was extremely violent, right? They would go in and raid. ICE here has behaved much more insidiously. Because we are a primarily immigrant community, you don't have to go into one neighborhood. You can go into every neighborhood. The other issue that's very interesting here is because in all of Miami-Dade County, not just in the city, approximately 15% of our residents had TPS. So that's over 300,000 people.
Temporary protected status.
Temporary protected status. And basically, willy-nilly, they've been removing temporary protected status. So, for example, 2 different waves, TPS was eliminated for our Venezuelan residents. And they go to bed at midnight. And they are living in this country and working in this country legally. And if they roll over in their bed at 12:01, they're suddenly undocumented. But in this case, ICE knows where they live, where they work, because they have a driver's license. Some of them own businesses. So it is very easy to just knock on people's doors and to also when they're checking in at immigration. So it's been very effective here because we simply are a place where if you look around any corner, if ICE wants to, they will find someone that they can take away. And there's nowhere I go where someone doesn't say to me, mi hermano, mi padre, mi sobrino, no sabemos dónde están. Right?
Don't know where my family member is.
We don't know where they are. And then, of course, we have Alligator Alcatraz. So I know where they're going, right? There is a constant churn of people, even to this day, through Alligator Alcatraz. So our residents are afraid. They feel victimized. We all want our border protected. Let's be very clear. I don't want criminals anywhere, right? Nobody's tougher on crime than me. But they said they were going to help with public safety. And now they're just going after everyone. And it's just got to stop. It's obviously inhumane, but it's also bad for the economy. And it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch. And I am proud to stand up for our residents and make it very clear Miami is one of the safest cities in America and in the world. And we are an immigrant city, which means you can live safely and have a great economy and respect people. And it worries me deeply that families are being torn apart and that our economy is put at risk.
What has it meant for the local economy, since you mentioned that?
Well, I certainly have. I'll give you an example. Met a gentleman, had a health clinic. When this was in November, when TPS was taken away for the last batch of Venezuelans. The very day that it's taken away, he gets a letter saying you've got to get rid of these 27 employees. So now there's 27 families without a breadwinner, right? And now you have a health clinic that's lacking 27 employees to provide patient care or administrative care. So that immediate effect is huge. And of course, we're waiting with bated breath. I mean, just dreading what kind of decision will come out around Haitian TPS and extending temporary protected status for our Haitian community. 20% of Haitians with temporary protected status work in healthcare. So they're nurses, physician's assistants, some are doctors, home healthcare aides, assisted living physician aides. So we are literally preparing for what if scenarios in hospitals, clinics, and certainly assisted living facilities. And
we're talking about a state with tons of retirees.
Correct.
This is happening because there was an election and President Trump won, right? And he won in part because a lot of voters, including a lot of Latino voters, were unhappy with the way that the Biden administration had handled immigration. As you say, nobody wants criminals harming people. But I think most people also want to follow the law. They want rule of law and humane treatment of people. How can, going forward in the bigger picture, how can Democrats lead on this issue in the future so that this doesn't keep happening?
Well, first and foremost, we've got to process people in a timely fashion. Like the backlog in the judicial system and all of that. And that started during COVID in the first President Trump administration, and President Biden never got through, the backlog. So that does require some funding. This current administration has really slowed down all of that. We are going to need a workforce in the future. I have certainly talked to colleagues that are in the Midwest, in Iowa and other places. In some ways, the immigration, they have a double whammy of immigration and tariffs that have affected the agricultural industry as much as it could affect our healthcare and tourism here in South Florida. There are common sense solutions that keep us safe, that make sure we are getting honest, hardworking immigrants who want to be in America for opportunity, who value what the United States of America signifies. And we also have the ability to make sure we're screening out folks we don't want here. And as of now, it's just indiscriminate. We're not doing things wisely and smartly.
Okay, speaking of solutions to all kinds of problems, you mentioned you are an engineer. When you, with that engineer brain, tackle a political problem, a policy problem, how do you look at things differently than, maybe somebody who came up with a more traditional political background, like say a lawyer might look at things?
I mean, I always just think they're solvable. Maybe sometimes that makes me Pollyannish, but most time it does not, right? I mean, let's take the affordability crisis with housing. When I started as county commissioner, I represent the densest part of the city, right? Downtown, Brickell, Little Havana. People say there's no land, there's no way you can build affordable housing. Well, it ended up, drove around, looked around. We had owned in municipal land over 50 acres of land. And I just asked myself, what's on that land and what should be on that land? And sometimes you'd have a surface parking lot right next to a train station. Sometimes I'd have a one-story building walking distance to a train station, right? Sometimes I'd have 30 acres of property, right, which could be a beautiful neighborhood, and there's 4 derelict buildings. So essentially, we have now managed to build neighborhoods, or in some cases on smaller parcels, buildings. And that's how I ended up building 4,000 units of affordable housing, right? You know what you want, which is housing affordability. What's everything that's standing in the way? An engineer just says, well, I can solve for that. I can solve for that. And then you got to decost it, right? Costs have gone up. So you got to make it less expensive for whether governments build it or the private sector build it. So we put together programs that waived impact fees, right? So, people are like, oh, well, that means you can't pave the roads and this and that. Well, I have people living in their cars. So you know what? I'd rather have them living in a house. I'll sacrifice that. We implemented rapidly accelerated permitting for anything that had housing affordability for workforce in them. So you could present your plans and you could be breaking ground in less than 6 months. And before I had started working on that permitting reform, which I'm in the middle of at the city, it would take 2 to 3 years to get your permits, right?
And this is for like, what, a renovation project?
No, ground up project.
And new building?
New building, you put 180 units of housing. Because when the bureaucracy of government takes 3 years to get you a permit and you can build the thing in 2, there is no way the bureaucracy should take longer than actual, people with hammers, nails, and concrete. It's ridiculous. And so I've proven that could be done. And I never think a problem can't be solved. You just got to find the path to the solution. And sometimes you need money and maybe you don't have the money and you got to do a bond and But that's different. Engineers are about solving problems and you think that way, even though they're political, right? Housing affordability is a political thing.
I mean, I'm sure other people have tried to solve some of these problems, right? And I think people complain about red tape and slowness in government a lot all over the country. And I mean, like, rules and regulations are there for a reason. Advocacy groups have concerns for a reason. I mean, there are reasons why sometimes these things are difficult to do. How have you been able to work through those challenges when other people haven't?
Well, I just get up every day and do it. And it doesn't mean there's not setbacks. And it doesn't mean you don't negotiate a little to the middle or give up A, B, or C. We certainly know in the housing crisis around America, if you ask everybody, they'll say they want, housing for our workforce, that missing middle of housing, right? For police, fire, teachers, nursing assistants, real working professionals, right? These are professionals. They want that, but then they don't necessarily want it where they live. And I don't know if this is good or bad, but I promised to build affordable housing, and so I build it. And when people say, well, we didn't want you to build it, I said, well, what part of I promised to build affordable housing was confusing, right? You can vote for someone that only wants to build luxury condos for the super rich. They're always available on the ballot. Always. There's always another option, right? But you voted for me because you liked that and you wanted that. And you have to trust me as I build these buildings, some of them big, some of them small, some of them houses, that they're going to be beautiful, that you're not going to notice the difference, and they're not going to lower your property values. And so for me, I've got to the point where I would put a new affordable housing development on the zoning agenda, and we'd have absolutely nobody come and speak against it because they knew that you couldn't tell the difference between this building and the building next door. They were beautiful, right?
So
they
some of
look
it goes
luxurious.
Down. Some of it's down to thinking about things like design.
Yep.
Thinking creatively.
Yeah. Design, colors, the lobby, right? If let's say in some of the higher density neighborhoods where you actually have a lobby to a building, then when you're walking by the lobby, it looks just as beautiful as the lobby in the whatever fancy pants building next door. And so nobody on the street knows who is in workforce price housing because they're all getting up at 8 a.m. to go to work, right? And that's how you live in community, right? Where we don't have people commuting a million miles away. We're all able to live together. And then we have a workforce that supports the amazing businesses that are locating here.
When it comes to solving problems, I think for a lot of people, government doesn't have that reputation, has a reputation for taking forever. You mentioned permitting reform. You live with this yourself in a way, I think, with the Flagler Street construction project. Can you tell me about it?
Yeah. This is also part of it's a new management approach, right? So with Flagler's our main street, our historic main street. It's been under construction for 10 years. I live 2 blocks from it, so I can attest to the fact that it's been under construction for 10 years. Now, it's a 5-block construction project. What kind of city cannot complete a 5-block construction project?
2 years for every block.
Yeah, I mean, ridiculous. And so that was one of the things I wanted to approach differently. I hired a city manager who is equally as problem-solving mindset as I have. And essentially, we just said, we're just not going to do it the old way. We did a procurement in about 2 weeks, found a new contractor. The contractor worked for 4 days, and the street was open. And so it's just like we don't always have to do what we did. And then even on permitting, I think it took us 6 weeks to launch same-day permitting for single-family homeowners versus like same-century permitting. So you walk in with your plans. Everybody's in the lobby of the building. They can help you, walk you through. You walk out with your permits for simple stuff, right? Putting a new roof on, replacing your windows, a door, repaving your driveway, redoing your bathroom to make it prettier, but you're not moving any plumbing, right? The bathtub's still going to be there. It's just going to be a new bathtub. And so a lot of the ideas that we've managed to roll out weren't my ideas. They were actually our employees' ideas, and they had been sitting right on the shelf waiting for management. In my case, I happen to be the mayor. And so but at the end of the day, it's a management role.
Waiting for somebody to do something.
Waiting for somebody to give them permission to innovate, right? And so we are now a government that is starting to learn to innovate after years of not innovating. We have to work with what we can work with, but we are allowed to work on flooding, right? Which is the mitigation of what's happening on climate, right? And our residents are not confused. Lots of them are driving electric cars, and lots of them are trying to, save and reduce, reuse, recycle. Like we have people that get that this is climate change and they have to live a little bit differently. But the flooding is crucial. So the city does have a stormwater master plan. Right now, we have about 14 of those projects under construction. Believe me, that's not enough. There's also other things we can do in our zoning code within the restraints or constraints or whatever you want to call them in Florida. Permeable pavement. We don't have a very permissible code for switching from asphalt that just blocks, water and pools water to permeable pavement. So we're working on new permeable pavement regulations. That's one of the things that I'm doing.
Okay, I didn't even realize there were regulations about this.
Well, I'll tell you what, local government is both cool and super boring at the same time. So if you want to put in, let's say it's your driveway to your house or a parking lot behind a little office building, they'll specify the materials. You can use poured concrete, you could do this, you could do pavers, but there's no real incentives for permeable pavement. And there are permeable pavements. So the water, when it rains, it goes down. It doesn't pool. So we have to clarify that you can use that. And then on the other side, because people haven't used it here, they might be afraid. We need to provide some incentives. So we've already changed the code in preparation that you would get a reduction in your permitting fees for that kind of pavement type.
I think for a long time, people talked about climate change like it was something really far off in the future, but it's real. It's happening now. And as you well know, places on the coast get hit hard by these floods and these hurricanes. It's not just a moral issue, it's an economic issue in a place like Miami. How are you dealing with that as a city?
We've done a lot of things. New seawall permits. We've got I've been working with a great company that does 3D printed living seawalls that mimic what the side of the ocean looks like versus a flat surface. So we get healthier water. And
wait, you can use a 3D printer to print a seawall?
All right, next time you come back to Miami, I know where we're going to be doing the podcast. We're going to be doing it at the factory that print concrete. It's a huge machine, and it undulates. So this biomimicry, and therefore marine life lives on it. But because it's not a flat surface, it's better for wave breakup. And
we are living in the future.
You are living in the future. And so there's lots of things that can be done at the local level to facilitate innovation in resiliency.
So we're talking about how to get these wins about sexy things like permeable pavement, although this sounds truly important.
If that's your definition of sexy, we need to have a talk.
Depends on the day. So, you get wins in these concrete, so to speak, practical things that make people's lives better little by little, or in big ways too. I also want to talk about just sort of the bigger picture. We're in a moment when, the Democratic Party is fighting a lot of different battles. It's fighting against Trumpism. It's also fighting within itself about the future of the party, about what it should represent, and about what is a winning message. You flipped Miami from red to blue. What are you doing that other Democrats are not?
I know my residents. I know what they need because I listen to them. And so what they need here, somebody else doesn't need. And the idea that there can just be this one message that works everywhere, for me, is confusing. I think if you look at the people that won, right? Mikey, Cheryl, and, Abigail, me, we're kind of all three moderate ladies, right? We're sort of in the middle, pretty functional, pretty get things done people. And then you look at somebody like Mamdani, who could never win here, could never win here, because the things he knows about his residents don't exist here, right? We're different. And I think when Democrats begin to dig deeply into the race they need to win and not worry about what some monolithic message is, then you are because we wear our values first. Our values are in the vanguard, right? We believe everybody needs to have access to economic opportunity. We believe we've got to save the planet. We believe women should have equal rights, including control over their body. We believe that small businesses have to grow and prosper. We believe in respect for individuals and immigrants. All those values, they don't differ from race to race, but how you talk about them and how you solve those issues for your locality, they're nuanced. So for me, I stay focused on Miami. I don't care what anybody says in Washington. I pay literally no attention to it. And I just every day think about what we're going to do here. And I did that in the campaign. And it doesn't mean that I think everything Washington is doing is right. I don't. I also don't think everything that's happening up there is bad. But what I can tell you is every minute of my day that I'm thinking about them, I'm not thinking about the people I represent. And then I'm not doing the job.
But you have been successful here in Miami. And yeah, maybe someone like Mamdani couldn't win in Miami. He won in New York. And I think the party is kind of having a moment of reflection. Like politics are national, right? I mean, they're local, but also national, increasingly so. Whose approach do you think is more replicable nationwide?
I mean, I think the numbers play it out. The majority of people are moderates, right? And there are certainly places in America where someone that is very, very, very progressive can win. But overall, I don't believe that is a national strategy. I think I'll give you an example in the state of Florida and basically kind of in Miami. A third of the people are Democrats, a third of the people are Republicans, a third of the people are in the middle. And that is the entire state of Florida, right? So if you're running super, super progressive, there might be tiny pockets you could win in, but that's not a national strategy. And that's why when I talk about we have to let Democrats be Democrats, but we can be Democrats differently. Like in my family, I have a brother and a sister, right? We're all part of the Higgins clan, but we're so different. But it doesn't mean we're not part of the family. And that's how I look at it. Let candidates who deeply understand their community or their districts, in the case when you get a little bit larger, let them run. Let them be themselves and let them be Democrats in their own way.
There is, though, an energized wing of the party that is not afraid, actually kind of proud of the word socialist. Mamdani is associated with the DSA, the Democratic Socialists. You, on the other hand, are not afraid of using the word capitalist.
Of course not.
Why?
Well, because I'm responsible for making sure there is economic prosperity in Miami. And the way to do that in America is by making sure that companies grow and flourish. And I have experience doing that in the private sector. I have experience in doing it here. For me, that is the secret of the United States of America. We have sometimes as a country lagged on the other half, as we spoke about earlier, about lifting people up and making sure they're not locked out of that prosperity. But I can help with that as a mayor. So I can make sure our economy is strong and then put together robust workforce development pipelining programs that connect our lower income residents to these higher paying jobs. And so for me, that is just my worldview, that what is great about this country is the fact that we are a country of innovators, we're a country of inventors, we're a country of business builders, we're a country that exports ideas and goods all around the world. And I want that to be in Miami, and I want economic prosperity here. And then my job as mayor is to make sure that we have programs that connect those folks to those opportunities.
We talked a little bit about the nature of the Miami community. The Latino vote at large is a growing demographic in this country. It is increasingly, it's not a monolithic demographic. I don't have to tell you that. You live here. And it's increasingly kind of a swing voting bloc. As somebody who lives here in Miami and is a leader here, what should Democrats be saying to those voters?
You said it perfectly. Latino voters are not monolithic, and they have to be asked about what they care about. And what I can tell you, because I represent a city that is primarily Hispanic, it doesn't matter what door I knock on. Doesn't matter who I talk to. Doesn't matter what neighborhood I'm in. Doesn't matter what party they're registered in. I can tell you what they're going to tell me they want from local government. They're going to want more affordable housing. They're going to ask us to help with traffic and build a little more public transportation. They do not want their streets to flood.
It all comes back to permeable pavers.
It all does. But at the end of the day, you have to meet voters where they are. And you got to get past this, are they Latino and are they Black and are they Caucasian or are they Republican or are they Democrat? Because when you talk to a voter about what matters to their family, then you know how to help them when you get elected. And it's so much more emotional. You are connecting with people at a level that is so deep. And for anybody that's listening that's never knocked on doors in a campaign, I'll tell you this. When you're running as a candidate and you knock on a door, people tell you things at such an intense level, it can make you cry. My mother broke her leg. We aren't able to get hospital insurance. My uncle was evicted. They tell you deeply personal stories because their expectations of government officials are that we are going to try to help. And that, I think, is where you connect with voters, is you don't look just at their demographics or their age or their gender, but you look inside their soul and say, how can we fix something? Just one thing that makes your life better, faster, easier, more prosperous, more joyous. In this case, build a park.
It's almost kind of heartwarming or encouraging to hear you say that, because I think of there being so much distrust in government and so little faith in institutions anymore. But when you go door to door, people actually expect that you can do something to make their lives better.
They may distrust government, but they haven't lost hope that it could change. And that's what they tell you when you're at the door.
Mayor Eileen Higgins, this has been so lovely. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. What a fun conversation.